Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Specialty Crops Risk Management webinar series. Today's webinar is the 7th of this 10 webinar series, and we're happy to have you all join us today. This series is funded by the North Central Extension Risk Management Center. I'm Olivia Hamlin, Education Extension Specialist for Iowa State University Extension and Outreach. I work in the Farm, Food, and Enterprise Development Program, which works largely with specialty producers on a wide variety of education and outreach topics. Joining us today is Ann Johanns. Ann is an Extension Program Specialist for Iowa State Extension and Outreach. Ann coordinates the library of materials available on the Ag Decision Maker website, conducts research on emerging agricultural issues, and supports educational efforts across the state with the farm management team. She was involved in production agriculture from a young age, helping on her parents' farm in southwest Iowa. Today, she lives with her husband and 3 active sons on a grain and livestock farm in Mitchell County. With that, I will hand it over to you, Ann.
Thank you so much, Olivia. I was telling them beforehand, I've been doing webinars for months. Today usually I'm the moderator too. And so today I was a little nervous when now I'm the speaker. It's kind of, the roles have switched and I have to reassess what I'm doing, right? No, thank you so much for having me. Today we're going to talk about Ag Decision Maker, which is a program that's near and dear to my heart. I've worked on it for years. I am passionate about providing information to help producers across the state make the best decisions. And so I'm not going to necessarily tell a producer what they should do, but to provide them the information to help them make that decision. And so I have a whole lot of screenshots in my PowerPoint today so that we can kind of talk about the resources that are available on the website. And so the very first one, if you have not visited Ag Decision Maker, this is just a picture of the homepage. So the middle of January, after several years of kind of starting with a vision of what the new website layout should look like, it finally became live the middle of January. This website is more accessible with a screen reader. It is more mobile friendly to adjust to different sizes of screens. The text, of all the documents changes better. And so super excited to have that. And then along with that, we cleared out, Ag Decision Maker, the very first website went live in 2001. And so you think over time, things tend to stay on a server. You can find them in a search engine when maybe you shouldn't. And so we really spent a lot of time these last couple of years cleaning out things that were outdated, materials that weren't helpful anymore. And so I think that we have a leaner, really more helpful and accessible website. And so it's also something that now going forward, we've kind of updated the site maybe once a month, and now it's definitely a more fluid process. And so for instance, right now we're making farm bill decisions, and so we're making changes to the website every couple of days. Maybe we have had a lot of questions come in, and so we're making changes to a publication to kind of build in those questions, or a little bit later I have some information on grain marketing. And so just know that it's always in motion now, and so that's kind of exciting too. So like Olivia said, we consider this kind of the library of farm management materials. And so I'll talk about the different types of materials we have on there, both in how you can access them, and then also in the topics. There's kind of 2 different paths there. And then just to kind of know that it is pretty heavily used as far as kind of extension websites go. We average about 85 to 8,600 visits per day. We usually get between, I don't know, over the course of a year, we have over 1 million downloads of the materials we have on the website. And so that's awesome. I love knowing that it's being used both in the state and out of the state. We get a lot of out-of-state landowners or people who are somehow connected to Iowa agriculture or want to learn more. So we get questions like that too. And then just to kind of give that push that we do send out notices once a month, even though we're making changes more often now. We just send out an email newsletter once a month with everything that's changed on the website. And so that's a free sign up. And so I just put the email address or the web link for where a person could go to join that email list. And then we have been, as we've been doing monthly webinars or webinar series, we've been just sending out maybe one quick small email to notify people. We're pretty protective of that email list. We're not using it for anything other than Ag Decision Maker materials. So website, one of the things that we do every month, we have a newsletter. This newsletter is actually in its 25th year. It started out before the website. It was printed and sent out all across Iowa to people who had a role in farm management. So either producers or crop insurance agents or lenders, people who worked with egg producers. And so it's been around for a long time. That's awesome. And we now have kind of expanded that. We bring in a lot more of some Outlook information. So last year, our Outlook economists have started kind of putting their monthly columns into this newsletter, and then we usually have some sort of deeper look into maybe a publication or a relevant topic. And so this is just a screenshot of this month's. Every January we release estimated costs of crop production, and so this just takes a closer look at what those changes were, what producers can expect when they're looking at 2021 production costs and how they can plan for that. And that's something that I think extends across whether you are, more of a conventional producer or specialty producer. And so we're going to dig into that a little bit more here in the next couple of minutes. I put this screenshot in there because this is from a year ago, and it is something that I get a question on every day right now. The first look that we get at county yields comes from USDA NASS, and so we will not see, actually I think the screenshot might be 2 years old. So this has 2018 yields on it. We will see 2020 county yields next Thursday. They are released by the USDA National Ag Statistics, and this is a publication that just pulls that all together, looks at 10-year averages, highs, lows, just kind of provides some detail on those county level yields. And as soon as that is released, we will work on getting these publications updated and online for people to have accessible. I know they are sometimes used in flexible leases. People will use the county level yield instead of a farm-based yield, and so it's used in decisions like that. It's used in some program planning for the crop year ahead, or maybe folks want to use it when they're looking at their farm bill decisions. So it's a really good piece of information, and like I said, it's the first look we'll get at that county level yield. We'll also see some RMA released county level yields that are actually used in calculating farm bill decisions, but we don't see those until June. And so this is something that I get a lot of questions about, and because I'm a data nerd, look forward to every year. And so that's a really popular one that we have on the website. And this looks at both corn and soybeans, and then we have one that has all 10 years for corn and all 10 years for soybeans. And then if you are ever interested, we can dig back even farther. USDA NASS has all that data, and I keep a record of it. And so that's something that we have available. The next thing was when we talk about planning, one thing is looking backwards too, right? So when we're looking at records for 2020, knowing that we have resources that help in financial records, your production records, all that sort of thing when we're talking about farm management. And so this is something that's used, in December when we're looking at year-end planning, what those prices for on-farm or your inventory is, and closing out your financial records for the year. And then the next one, I just pulled up several that were really popular. This is one we just updated. So we have our estimated costs of crop production that look at each type of crop in detail, but this is just a summary of annual costs over time. And so when you talk to producers who maybe have a landowner who retired several years ago, or maybe they live out of state, or they inherited the farm and they have never been involved in production agriculture of any kind, they just don't necessarily have a good concept maybe of what some of those costs are. And so, when they're seeing it's $3.70 a bushel for corn, to that, it's a small number when you think about what the yield is, that expands quickly. And so having something like this, where you can show them the different categories that go into total cost of production, it's really helpful that you can kind of put something behind that conversation, I think. And so that's one of it's a conversation piece for sure, to be able to show over time maybe how those costs have changed. And so this one goes, the screenshot, I cut out those middle years, but this has every year back from 1975 through this year for what those estimated costs are. And this is looking at soybeans, but then there's a corn budget or corn page as well. And so it just has for corn and soybeans what those average costs of production have been for the last 40 years. So Then Olivia, since you're my moderator, right, I pulled this one up because it is your picture. This is something that, you know, with the FED group, that there's a lot of publications that they've been working really hard to get updated. And Ag Decision Maker, we have historically kind of been the home for decision tools. And so we continue to provide that great resource, is that you have these publications that provide annual costs. So for the fruit and vegetable budgets, you know, that producers can see what averages are, but those are just averages, right? Every farm's going to be different. Every farm's going to be a different size or have different inputs, and so it's really good to have a place to start. And so those budgets are really that really good starting point, seeing what all those costs are, making sure you're capturing everything. And so then we have decision tools that are Excel spreadsheet based. And so you can start with those, you know, you have that budget, and then you can work with the tools to kind of adjust those to your operation. And so this is just the screenshot that has the links for all the different ones. And then I have links down there that we have fruit and vegetables, perennial and annual crops. We have budgets on organic crops. Then we have those conventional crops, and then livestock budgets. And so lots of different options there. And if you have something, if you're raising something we don't have, one thing about our tools is that they're kind of set up as a template. And so if you want to start with one of our tools and kind of manipulate it and make it your own, we would be okay with that. And so that's always a possibility. And so I took another screenshot. Whoops, I went too far. I took a screenshot of what the Excel files look like, because if you've captured one and understand how to use it, that kind of transfers across all of them. And so anything that is a shaded cell, that's something that you can change. But we have these protected, but not password protected. And so the reason behind that is so that you can't mess up the formulas on accident. You have to kind of, you have to know to unprotect it if you really wanted to dig into it farther. But we try to always make the decision tools we have on the website very transparent, so that you can see all the entries, where those entries are going, and then, you know, to be able to track. And so there's not like hidden calculations or hidden cells where you might, you know, there might be something going on and you can't track it. And so on this one, you can see all the supplies that go into planting those tomatoes, the different levels of labor costs, and then harvest costs, and then it would total all those. And it's really nice that then you can make adjustments, right, in those inputs, and see what that does to the bottom line. So that's how all the tools work. This one has an example. You can see those different tabs down there at the bottom as an example that matches exactly with what the printed bulletin has in it. All these inputs match what's in that bulletin, the costs. So you could start with that and adjust it, or all the tools have a blank tab that you can start from scratch and enter in anything you wanted to there. And then I took just a little bit closer up of one of our most downloaded decision tools probably right now is one of the farm build tools, but then across the year we see a lot of downloads for our enterprise budgets. And so this is one of the corn following corn budget. But like I said, they all work pretty similar, where you put in all those inputs and everything calculates right there. But then I have the bottom, so there we go. The bottom of that same spreadsheet, you can see how it totals everything either on a per acre, per bushel. You can see all acres. And then we do have a section there where you could put in some revenue, but we're really looking at, on enterprise budget spreadsheets, it's looking at calculating the total cost, because that feeds into your marketing decisions, right? If you know how much it's costing you to produce a crop, then you know what your marketing goals should be. Because like in the case of this budget where I have that $4.07, that's my break-even cost on this corn crop. And so that's what my goal is for marketing, because anything below that, then I'm losing money long-term on that operation, right? And then the very bottom of every single spreadsheet we have on the website, there is a link for the author. And so if you would have questions on any one of them, there's a contact at the top of every one. There's a link back to the publication that it is connected to. And so we try and provide some resources that way as well. And speaking of marketing, one of the things that we get a lot of questions on when you're talking about risk management is your marketing. And so we have a Crop Marketing 101 video series, and then also that video series was done a couple years ago, and it really looks at some of the basics for crop marketing, understanding basis, that sort of thing. And then we are partnered with Iowa Farm Bureau on the Iowa Commodity Challenge, and that is a program that runs every year where you can do a simulation and actually kind of play with some marketing tools so that you're not using real dollars, but you're running through a simulation that would work just as if you were using real dollars. And so to learn more about the tools really firsthand that way. And so that's something that we work with them, and we update some of the materials on that page every week. And so that link right there goes to both of those, but those are definitely options as folks wanted to learn more on marketing. And I mentioned that I was going to talk about marketing a little bit later, and here is what I wanted to show is that this year, because we have Chad Hart, who is our extension grain economist. He is usually on the road constantly, to the point it's kind of a joke about how many miles his Prius gets. And people around the state are so used to getting to see him, and that just has not gotten to happen this year. He is going to do some meetings here in the next few months, maybe in person, but it just hasn't been a good possibility. And so we encouraged him to not just, he's always had his presentation or his kind of grain outlook. He writes a monthly column for us, and then he has had his PowerPoint, but we encouraged him to do a video presentation. And so we always have the most recent one linked on the homepage. And then there's also a whole Outlook devoted section. And so that's what that other arrow is there at the top, is that all of his materials are archived there. And so that's what that page looks like. We have his newest one, and then he's done a couple here in January, and so you can access all those. I think the first one's maybe 45 minutes, and then he's really brought it back to just the new information. And so now it's like 20 minutes maybe of market outlook. And so it's really, really good benefit that we've talked Chad into doing. And so that's really good. And then all of the resources that he uses and looking at, the different USDA reports, other states' outlooks. So that's all on that page. And so that's a good resource. And then also on this page, we have some tools that we update on a regular basis, looking at corn and soybean profitability, ethanol, biodiesel. We have some different models that are all available on this page as well, and those are also updated monthly. So then also under Hot Topics, going back to the homepage, I just wanted to highlight that we're constantly kind of trying to provide things in a different way right now. My farm management field specialists miss people immensely. They cannot wait to get back into more in-person meetings. They are doing a few here and there, but until then, or in the interim, we also have been doing our Farm Bill webinar series and also doing monthly webinars focused on some risk, different farm management topics. So I was thinking about in January, we get a lot of questions around estate planning and farm transitions. And so we have a couple of specialists that work with families across the state on some of those questions. And so I had them do a webinar talking about some of the things to consider, right? Because step one is determining your goals and knowing maybe not how to do it, but what you want to do, and then determining the steps to reach those goals. And so those are some resources that we've been doing these last few months. And so those are also linked under those hot topics. And then over on the right of that page is where we always have the most recent newsletter and then any updates that we've done in the current month. So those are always from our homepage. And the Farm Bill tools, I was talking to them beforehand that we are right in the middle of a Farm Bill webinar series. And so we've been working hard to provide some resources for producers making those decisions by March 15th. And so we have a series going on now, but then also on this page is where we have our decision tools for estimating 2021 payments under either ARC County or PLC, which is the Price Loss Coverage Program or the Agricultural Risk Coverage Program. And those are both programs through USDA FSA for Iowa producers. And a question I got that might be very, very relevant for a specialty crop producer is when you talk about those crops, they are based on conventional crops, right? That you have base acres with FSA that are either in corn, soybeans, oats. I think there's some pea base acres in the state, maybe a few wheat acres in some county. So those are based on those crops, and that is regardless of what you grow on those acres. So if you have a farm with a soybean base acres of 40 acres, but you actually raise organic corn, ARC and PLC are paying on those soybean base acres. So that's actually what your decision is based on, not necessarily what you are growing, which can be confusing, but that's the way those programs work. And so I've had some questions on, if you have a very high soybean base and you're growing corn, the program pays on the base acres with FSA, and that form is, I have it written down, FSA, the 156 EZ. That's the form that those programs are, the data on that form, I guess, is what those programs pay on. And so for an organic producer, they're still making decisions based on conventional crop information, I guess is how I would put that. And then the payments are based on conventional crops within the county too. And so the triggers are county level. And so what you grow on your specific farm, you're going to have a different type of risk management safety net, right? Specific to your farm. You're looking at your crop insurance there, that these are kind of the lowest end of the safety net, that they're going to capture really large losses within the county is when those are going to pay out. So just something to keep in mind. But if you have more questions, I would highly encourage you to go to that website, and hopefully you would be able to find them. But if not, we have specialists who are more than willing to answer those questions. The other thing that is super popular on Ag Decision Maker, and something that we do programming on around the year, is Farmland Leasing. So one of the heaviest downloaded publications, not just from Ag Decision Maker, but across Extension, is the ISU Cash Rental Rate Survey. It comes out every May. The survey is actually, the instrument itself is mailed out to producers and lenders and people who are knowledgeable about rental rates in a county here after March 1st, because that is when leases start. And so the survey has never been intended to set rental rates in the state. It was a tool to report them and show what trends are over time. And so that survey comes out in middle of May, first couple weeks of May, and looks at county rental rates across the state. And so but on this page, we have other materials that support farmland leasing arrangements, because it is about more than just what the rate is, how to have better communication between a tenant and landowner, how to share information confidentially and have that open communication, how to improve your farm. Either maybe a landowner wants to look at having a tenant who would do some conservation practices, or maybe a tenant wants to do some long-term conservation practices and wants to talk with that landowner. So to have some of those tools available and some addendums that you could actually put with just a standard lease form. And so that is all on the leasing page. Oh, and then wait, I'm going to go back. The other thing we get a lot of questions about is building rental rates. And so that's the other thing, not just farmland, but what about the storage buildings and the grain bins and livestock facilities? And so we do have another survey that's also looking at those facilities. And then on financial resources, so all this is under whole farm, looking at a better understanding of financial records, the different types of financial records. I know Craig Chase has done some updating too about like pricing for profit. So if you have a CSA, are you pricing it with the market? Are you competing with what grocery store prices are? Or are you pricing that box of goods based on what it's costing you to produce it? And so those are things we have linked from this page. We have some tools that will help support that. One of the ones that he just updated, and I think Olivia was involved too, was looking at different outlets. So if you sell direct to a restaurant with some of those locally produced goods versus selling at farmers market versus selling it through a CSA, kind of determining the different costs associated with marketing at each spot. And so those are things we have linked along with the resources on this page. And then the other thing, so this is Ag Decision Maker related. This is a separate website that we maintain. When we talk about financial information, Iowa State has a resource called the Farm Financial Planning Program. So this is contracted employees across the state who can do some one-on-one work with producers. And so they can talk with a producer who might be looking at making a major change in their operation. So maybe you're looking at adding or removing an enterprise. Maybe you do have some financial concerns and it's not necessarily it's always good to address those before they become a bigger issue. And so that is what the associates can help with. They can really look at, one of them is a retired banker, you know, really look at the last 3 to 4 years of financial information that you have and kind of see where could changes be made. His name is Norland Hinke, and we have 7 associates across the state. So there's a link there if you wanted to find one. But one thing that we did here about 6 months ago was recorded some audio clips with Norland talking about how do you talk to a lender? How do you have that conversation? How do you, you know, present a new idea? What are they looking for? And so there's some really good audio, short, they're all about 10 minutes, just some clips that get some retired bankers experience. And so those are really a benefit here. But there's also some resources if you do have some financial concerns, want to understand how farm mediation works, how to look at some of the different programs that are available from USDA. We have you know, a page with, if you have stresses beyond that or just need to talk to somebody, a link to Iowa Concern, because that's always a resource for Iowans in need. And so just to have those, all those resources are always available. And so that's one of the great things about the website is that, you know, when you have questions, you can try and seek out answers. If you can't get a hold of somebody else at that moment, but Iowa Concern is available 24 hours a day. And so that's always a resource for Iowans. And Iowa State University with Ag Decision Maker, we are one of many states resources. And so I always like to say, I get a lot of questions from other states and you do have a similar resource, but each state kind of has their own specialty. I think that within Iowa, we are super lucky, I guess, with our cash rent survey and our custom rate survey and some of the details that we can provide in helping make those decisions. Our decision tools, we try to keep them pretty simple, easy to fill out, and some of the other states get a little more complicated and maybe look beyond the analysis more than a producer might want to in any one case. And so just know that when I get a question about dairy, I'm going to look at the University of Wisconsin too and see what resources they have. Or I'm going to talk with our dairy team and see, and they're going to, before I say there isn't something, because there probably is, right? University of Minnesota, they have a really good resource for looking at financial information and getting some benchmarks, because that's really valuable to be able to benchmark across either a state or your type of enterprise. And so I like to look at University of Minnesota for some of that, look at K-State. Maybe if I want to get more detail on family living expenses, Kansas State has some better data than other states have been able to gather. And so I'll look to them for that. So all sorts of different information. University of Illinois with FarmDoc, a lot of policy information. So those resources are out there. I am super proud of what we can provide through Ag Decision Maker, but just know that other states also have some great resources that we can pull from. And I know that they pull from some of the materials we have on Ag Decision Maker because they'll call us questions sometimes. So with that, I have told you all of what I am passionate about, right? And there's lots more on there. There is a search box in the top right corner for Ag Decision Maker. So anytime you think that it might be a farm management type thing, but you don't know quite where to look, that search box works great. One of the things that was important to me was how the results from the search showed up when we were trying to determine the template we used for the new layout. And so that was something that, you know, to provide the right responses, right, when you typed in some of the most searched for things, but then also just in how it looked and kind of being able to decipher between the results which one might be the best fit for you. And so that was important for us. So with that, I don't know, Krista, Olivia, do you have any questions?
If anybody does have any questions, feel free to drop those in the chat box now. Thank you, Ann, for joining us. And I'm sure we will have at least one question in that chat box here soon. But until then, from a specialty producer standpoint, which one of the many resources that you have on Ag Decision Maker do you think would be most impactful for these people?
It depends what kind of specialty producer maybe. So with that, I think basic information is, I think it's always vital to know your cost of production. So that's kind of why I had those enterprise budgets first. I think that that is so important to have that core piece of information because so much builds off of it. Knowing what it is costing you to produce whatever good it is you're producing on your farm. Because if you don't, you can't make the best decisions beyond that. You can't make better marketing decisions. You can't make better input decisions. I think that that is a core piece that all producers they absolutely need to know what their cost of production is.
And there is an absolute wealth of information on Ag Decision Maker. A lot of tools, a lot of ability for folks to, sign up for the newsletter, listen to even audio files, things like that. This amazing website is provided at no cost to people. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so yes, it's so important, right, that everybody can be able to make the best decisions they can. So I think it is vital that we have resources like Ag Decision Maker. I think that's probably why I push the ones from other states too. That Extension provides this service to help, whether you're a small producer, a large producer, those landowners who inherit farms, they need the education. And so I think it's so important we can provide that to help with, because it's not free, right? It's not free to have a website. We do have some private sponsors, and that's a great partnership that we can provide them back with kind of a personalized newsletter each month with what we've done with Ag Decision Maker, but they do help support the web, the behind the scenes work that we are able to do. And so, I think it is a value, both those in production agriculture and those who just need to learn more, because it affects us all. So.
Absolutely. I'll do one last call for questions here in the chat box. But if we do not have any, thank you, Ann, again for joining us. Next week we have on Justin Glisson, who is the state climatologist, and then Johannan will be back on to join us for a conversation about weather and how to kind of mitigate those risks as they're coming in.
I think we all have questions about the weather, Olivia.
Right? When are we going to be done with this cold is probably the first one, right? So with that, thank you very much, Ann, and we hope to see you all next week.
Thank you.